Hi, welcome to 9+9, the Honest Pregnancy and Birthing podcast. And today's episode is gonna be the diametrical opposite of last week's episode. With me is Eileen, thanks for having me, who has given birth in Sweden. So today we will talk about giving birth in Sweden, which is hopefully not the standard, your experience. So how was your care in Sweden? I know in Germany there is like birthing houses and there's hospitals, and you can basically choose what you feel most comfortable with. If you want to go to a hospital or if you go to use advice. Is there something like that?
Yeah, so the way that the system is set up is, I think by default, it goes only through a midwife. So unless something is out of the ordinary, you will really need a doctor or a gynecologist along the process. So everything is handled end to end by midwives. So when you find out you're pregnant, you go to one of these midwife centers and get registered there. And I don't even think they even did a pregnancy test. I think they was like, believing you. Yeah, so you did a test at home, and finding it's like, so do you feel pregnant? Yeah, I guess I feel pregnant. So I found it quite odd that they didn't actually do a pregnancy test. But I think we did. We then did the ultrasound just for ourselves, so you can then kind of privately, get these services. So we did an ultrasound just for ourselves, just wanted to know and see. And be sure and everything. Let's see. But yeah, you keep having your appointments with the midwives. They take some, I think, blood sugar tests, just check on the heartbeat at some point. Just pretty. They measure the belly. Yeah.
They measure the belly.
Yeah, I'm not sure never thing.
I've never measured my belly. Maybe I should have.
It's how they're tracking the growth of the child. They measure. I guess belly button downwards to measure the size of the belly.
So there's no ultrasound to check how big the baby is.
No, I think during the entire pregnancy they do one ultrasound. I think there was only one ultrasound. I think that is only if you want to do sort of checkups for symptomatic.
Yeah, like around 21 weeks they do for Down syndrome, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that might have been the only standard ultrasound. I think if you don't opt for that, because you don't have to do that obviously, then you might actually never have an ultrasound during pregnancy.
And you would basically never find out unless you find out.
Yeah.
Wow. And how do you check the heartbeat? Like they come home to check it?
No, you go to these centers on this machine that you can actually then hear it out loud, like for yourself and your partner as well. But they also use these a little bit old school, kind of like a wooden device. I think that was in the beginning. They started this like
the thing to hear?
Yeah. They had this like long wooden device that they put against your belly and the ear and actually find the heartbeat apparently. Yeah, I think that's what they did in the beginning, and then later on, they switched to that machine that you could actually hear it out loud.
I think that's nice learning that literally like one of the most advanced countries has the most rudimentary. I don't know if I like it or if I don't like it. Like, it's also really comforting to know that technically you have all the technology available and you could do a million things like 3D, ultrasound, whatever. But you choose, like as a country, as a system, they choose to keep it very simple and bare minimum. It feels like an informed choice. It feels like you have access to internet, but you raise your children touch free.
Yeah, that is like opting out. And I think that's very much how the system is there in general. Because again, I'm German. I'm growing up in the German system of a lot of preventative tests and regular checkups. And you come to Sweden and that just doesn't exist. Okay, it doesn't feel safe because you're just so used to it. And I'm not even sure if it's, better or worse. Clearly they have their data that has made them come to these conclusions and take certain decisions. And in the beginning, there was something that actually spoke to me quite a lot, to not have this so much as a medical process, but a bit more natural, not so many doctors involved. Felt a bit less clinical. I think felt a bit more natural to
the therapist. And you're also less worried, right?
Yeah.
You don't know about, like, I remember once for my second kid, they asked me if I want to lose really extensive blood report. And I was like, why would I want to do this? And they're like, oh, this genetic disease or that genetic disease. And I wasn't even aware of these diseases. And then you become really panicky because you feel like, I should check on them because what if they have it? And I was so lazy or I was so like laid back. I didn't check on and could have known already.
Yeah.
So, but this was nice. You just...
It was less of have medical interference, I guess, in a way. But then on the other hand, like if you are worried about something, then you don't really get that reassurance because you wouldn't get that extra test, and then you have to kind of go through a private process like we did with the ultrasound, and then you just do this privately on the side to just...
And you would have to prove that you had that feeling, so hence you get to see a doctor. Like you can't just see a doctor.
No, exactly, because also there are no doctors in the process, right? Then you would have to figure out like, now I want to see a doctor. Just now. But yeah, so throughout the pregnancy, I think everything was quite relaxed, and also preparing for the birth. And we did this hypnobirthing course, which is also something that's provided by the healthcare system, so to speak, that you get to sign up for one of these birth preparation courses. And we chose that one, and it sounded lovely, it's just like, you're just going to breathe out your baby. So we coming closer to the birth in one way, and I was a bit scared, a bit freaked out, because you just don't know what to expect, really, and especially around the level of pain. But in my head, I was quite convinced, I'm just going to breathe out my baby, and I was quite determined to see how far I can get without what's called epidural, without pain medication. So I was quite like, okay, let's do this as natural as possible. We signed ourselves up for more like a birthing house, more like a midwife-run center versus a traditional hospital. So we were quite determined to make this as natural and as interference-free as possible. The people that have been with you throughout the pregnancy, you don't really need them during that birthing process and the first few days after. Basically, you give birth with around people that you've never seen before, and you also don't know which hospital you're gonna end up in, because they have your list, I guess, of 5 really different options, and they try to give you your first preference, but depending on the availability, you don't know where you're gonna end up.
Wow. But you give here because sometimes you can give a birthing plan, like how it would if you would like an epidural for sure, or if you would like to not have one, and like there's other interventions. So is there an option to make the birth plan? And who gets it then? Because if you don't know where you end up, and you don't have a doctor, who gets this list?
Yeah. So you make that birthing plan with your midwife in the preparation, who registers what are your preferences and how would you envision your birth, and everything is then in the system. So in that sense, the Swedish system is very good, because access to information, everything is digital, everything is centralized. So wherever you're going to end up, they look up your, they look you up in the system, and then they have the download of what has been documented.
Okay. And then
whether that happens or not,
we shall find out.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So then what happened?
Then what happened? Yeah.
It was in winter, no, that you gave birth? The Swedish winter. Wonderful.
Swedish winter. It was in February, and even the last days leading up was still like walking through the snow, trying to get a bit of a walk in. And to be honest, like as much as the pregnancy was fairly hassle-free, complication-free, when it all started, I was quite relaxed, we went to sleep the night before, and like on the dot at 11 o'clock, and my husband was already asleep, and I think I was also just probably woke up from the contractions, and it was quite manageable with the pain, and I started to kind of measure. I didn't wake him up, so I started to kind of measure how far they are apart. And I think it's quite unusual for them to be as close together as I had done. So I started off immediately with 10 minutes.
You had very deep sleep. You probably had contractions before that, and you just were sleeping through.
Just a very fast progression through the labor. So it started 10 minutes apart, like from the first... from when the labor started, essentially. So 10 minutes apart. And yeah, I don't know. I was in my head, I was like, oh, this is going to take 8 years. And, you know, I'm going to let him sleep. It's going to be like quite a little, you know, I'm going to need him awake and fit to drive him to the hospital and take care of everything. So, and also there's nothing that I thought he could kind of do that would, yeah, it was quite okay. I was lying in bed, I was like kind of like breathing through it. It was quite manageable. And I think I did that for 6-7 hours or something.
And Julie thought, like, okay, I can wake him up 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so now it's probably time to go to the hospital soon. So I know you've slept enough to, you know, recharge. Let's get up and like get all the stuff ready and get organized and start calling the hospital and whatnot. Yeah, so far so good, I would say. So we're leading up to it. Yeah, leading up to it. I mean, it's a long process. It's a long journey until, you know, we have a baby. So I think he called the hospital and they're like, yeah, this is going to take ages.
But how did they judge it's going to take ages? Because you were already in labor for 8 hours.
Yeah, that seemed like, yeah, it's still going to take, it's probably going to take 20 hours. I didn't really know how they judged it because, again, if you're in labor for like 8 hours, 10 minutes apart, and you would guess that, you know, it would be happening soon. But they basically told us, yeah, we don't actually have a free spot. We don't have availability right now. You might not be able to come here. You might have to start calling other hospitals. So that's also another thing. It's a lot of that coordination around it, then starting to call all the hospitals in your list and figuring out where can we actually go, how do we organize all of this. Yeah, we're, you know, at home and tried all the things. Some were working, some were not. You know how they say, okay, you want to take a hot shower or something like that. And I tried, I was like, yeah, this is absolutely not working. Like, just get out of here. Mainly just kind of like trying to bring it through it and trying to clock the contractions. Yeah, and then at some point I felt like this is really unbearable. I felt like, okay, so now I thought I was going to last potentially through the birth without pain medication. Wasn't. So this is too much now. And I think we by that time had called probably twice already.
And you're at home and you're like, okay, now I need an epidural. But where will you get an epidural?
Exactly. So it's like, I think it's time to go in. And again, like I think I have a good sense of awareness and good feeling of my own body. And I just like really felt, okay, so it's time to go.
Yeah, you did feel pregnant after.
Yeah, I did feel pregnant after. So I knew I was pregnant, just, you know, couldn't felt it. But I also felt it was time to go to the hospital. And it's almost like, yeah, no, it's just going to be so much more time. And like, you can't come in now. We're just going to send you back. You can't come in.
But how are they judging this?
I don't know.
Did you do video call?
No, I mean, you're on the phone. I guess they also hear how loud you scream in the back or something. I'm not really sure if that's
what my doula said. She said she essentially could hear on the voice how close it is to give
birth. Which is quite funny because, I mean, it's such a primal experience being in labor. And I was screaming so loud, like, you know, we're in our apartment. And I felt like, I mean, the neighbors must be thinking, what the hell was going on? Because I was letting out this, like, very tribal screams. Well, I'm like, I mean, if I heard someone screaming like that in Vail right now, I'd be like, yeah, this is close. They better go to the hospital. So they must have, they should have recognized that they didn't have availability.
And your neighbors didn't check on you, they knew you were pregnant?
Yes. It's sweet-eyed, you know, like,
somebody getting partnered or somebody giving birth, that's fine.
Yeah. Yes, I was really convinced. So I was just harassing my husband, like, you have to find a way for us to go to the hospital.
Yeah, and he said he's never heard those sounds before.
Yeah, I mean, the way to describe it is primal. It's just like, you start feeling like an animal, right? And it's just the most primal experience I think you can have in life. And then I told him, like, you call them and you tell them, I cannot manage and bear this pain. I need to come in and I get something. And then the smart advice that we got on the phone is to take 2 paracetamols. Which sounds a bit outrageous. And again, if you were in your clear mind, you'd be like, what's wrong with you? But, you know, you're desperate, like, okay, I guess we're going to take 2 paracetamols now. So as a result of that, the next contraction, I'm going through excruciating pain while vomiting out these paracetamols. So, you know, great stuff. That really helped.
Well,
you don't know what you're going to do. You just scream. You're just there. You can't really move. You can't do anything. You're just there. You're like going through it. You're in pain. You're screaming. And I didn't even know what went through my head then, other than just I guess, getting angry that, like, you know,
Yeah, because usually
why so they listen to you? You know what's going on in your body. You know, you're the only one that can actually assess the situation, and then basically denying you your self-awareness. It's like, no, but we've done this thousands of times. It's not time yet. Okay. Turned out it was time because
because this is the highlight of this episode.
yeah, not so much later. You know, I went to the bathroom and then the water broke, and then I just realized, well, it is happening because I just felt like my body is starting to push out this baby now. So
it must have been like,
I just yelled for him to like come to the washroom, and I was like,
birth the baby.
It's happening. I'm just like, I'm gonna lie down here. I'm gonna have this baby now. So I'm not sure what you need to do, but I'm having a baby now. And then he called them, and then they, you know, rocked up there with 2 ambulances. They actually also weren't sure if I could make it to the hospital.
Yeah, because you're in labor land already.
Yeah, it's already happening. Then they couldn't make up their mind. And I'm also just like, what's going on? Just take a decision. Like, I can't. Clearly you must have seen this before. Somebody must be able to assess whether I can make it to the nearest hospital, which is like a 10-minute drive or something.
This is the CEO speaking.
Yeah.
It's like, just take a decision.
Just take a decision. Either it's here or it's there. I don't really care because this is happening and I'm having this baby. One of the women, she was just like, okay, I'm going to take a call now. We're going.
Great, one of the women. I like that, at least.
But I have to say, one of the guys in the ambulance, the sweetest. And yeah, so then they put you on the stretcher.
But how do you lie down?
I
you're having a baby.
Because I was also lying down on the floor. It's
Okay.
just like, yeah, so I'm lying on the stretcher and, you know, they just threw a couple of blankets on me. And I'm rolling into the elevator, and outside is like this high snow, minus 11 degrees, and then they like kind of shakily through the snow get you into this ambulance. And I think they told Sid to meet us at the hospital and drive. I was like, I mean, how's he supposed to drive the car now? So he's like, well, I'm coming with you in this ambulance. So they allowed him in the front, and then us, you know, I'm like, again, I'm having a baby in the back of this ambulance, holding this very kind, cute, guy, one of these first responders, and just, you know, holding my hand. Made it to the hospital.
Still screaming.
Not actually hospital, this sort of birthing house, which is located in a hospital, and yeah, then you're on the stretcher in the hallway, and I think the adrenaline kind of maybe slows down the contractions a little bit because, you know, now it became very stressful. Now, from actually something that I was prepared to be very smooth, you know, I'm going to breathe out my baby, like.
And you were breathing out your baby.
Yeah, kind of. Suddenly it became an emergency situation, which it didn't have to be, right? So then it's a lot of stress everywhere, and I think then maybe it slowed down a little bit. But yeah, then we're in the hallway, and because they were basically packed, they didn't have space for us, which is why they were telling us not to come in because where are you going to go? And then we land there, and nobody knew where to send us, and then I was just, you know, lying in the hallway, just like screaming, and because I also realized a lot of you screamed that faster things are gonna move now. I still remember, I think there was someone else in that room that they had then just kind of vacated, and then we're going into this labor delivery room. I don't know, I just felt like they really kind of rushed us through this process.
But how can you rush someone through labor? First of all, they were stopping
delay.
Yeah, first they were delaying it, then you were having the baby, then they basically put it to a hard stop, transport you somewhere, and then they're again speeding up. Like, what are you, a machine or what?
Yeah, I don't know. Everything was a bit of a blur, and in Sweden, because I mean, it was definitely too late for an epidural. That ship had sailed, obviously, and then they have this gas. I don't know what it's.
Oh my god! Like they used to use
like the laughing gas.
Laughing gas.
Yeah, and they give you that, and I still to this day don't know if I was just too pumped up with adrenaline for this not to work, or if they actually hadn't switched it on properly. Anything's possible. So like that did nothing. And yeah, I don't know. I felt
that's hilarious. I forgot to like put the gas
I actually switched it on. I remember asking Sid that afterwards. Like, I just feel like they actually didn't switch it on.
Like, good luck it wasn't a C-section. They were like cutting you open. Did you feel something?
I mean, I've heard some horror stories about that as well. But I just really felt like they rushed me through it. Like it's something more like a feeling. I can't prove anything. But it also was the moment I was done. they clocked out, so their shift was probably open. So I'm sure that's an incentive to just, make this happen quicker. Because one thing you realize is that it's all just, it's like a factory, right? It's not like there's no human experience, there's no empathy. This is just a job, and it's all about efficiency.
But I would understand if this would be like a big hospital, like Stockholm Central Hospital, whatever it's called, or like University Hospital. But this is a birthing house. So birthing house, I always think it's like fairy lights and dark rooms and like very caring middle-aged midwives.
Yeah. It was inside a hospital and felt pretty much like a hospital, except you don't have
doctors.
The best of both worlds. To be honest, I felt quite violated through that process, and I rushed through that process. So I think, I should probably remember this, but I think it took 40 minutes from the moment we reached the hospital till she was born, which is pretty fast. And I think when I'm telling this story, I'm like, okay, so this would have been enough for a horror story of birth, but it just kept going and going and going. Like nobody even kind of cared or anything. But it was just bizarre. So then I'm lying there with my arm on my chest.
At least they gave you the baby.
They gave me the baby because what else would they do?
They had no space they had no space for the baby also.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and I just remember feeling just so cold. I had I don't know.
It's minus 11 degrees outside. How many degrees was it inside?
Yeah, so it's minus 11 degrees, and at some point I noticed they had the window open. I'm like, I'm just lying there on this hospital bed, just a newborn, on my chest. And they just had I'm freezing, and they had the window open at minus 11 degrees, which felt completely bizarre. And I was also covered in my daughter's feces, which nobody had,
Which is super dangerous because if they pass
mecomia to clean or.
But that's super dangerous also because if that happens in the womb, if they pass.
Which is another thing which makes me think given how soon after the birth she, let's say, had a bowel movement. If that were to happen actually when she was still in,
it's toxic.
It is super dangerous, which is again just why you shouldn't kind of have people just be by themselves at home.
Even if you do a home birth, you have
someone
a midwife
there.
who comes when it starts and sets you up and is there with you. So even home births, there's an expert around. It's not like a home birth that's just you and your husband
and clearly these first responders, they were not equipped for that. I'm not sure how many of these situations they see, right? So they were not specialized in how to manage or how to deliver a child.
It's interesting if I think about all the other episodes that we have where I always feel like you're so lucky you had the medical system, because if you wouldn't have had the medical system, your baby would have died or you would have died or something bad could have happened. So I feel a lot of women who came here, I always like to point that out. But with you, I feel like you're so lucky that despite all of this happening, nothing happened. She came out fine and you were fine and nobody died and nobody had long-lasting impact on any sort. Despite all of this, it feels like the exact reverse from everybody else's experience. It's quite scary.
I object to the no long-lasting impact. This is the trauma that this brings. That is a long-lasting impact. Maybe no major physical impacts, but you just get set up for failure. It's so crucial. The first days, hours, days, and weeks, the sort of the fourth trimester, as they call it, is so important. But you go through that with basically being traumatized, right? So that really sets you up for failure from the start. In this bizarre situation where everything is just horrible and everything has just gone wrong, and this is this thing that you were looking forward to, and it's going to be this real moment of female empowerment, which it still was to some extent. But it didn't feel like it wasn't a good experience. And then they come with this sandwich with the Swedish flag.
No,
it's this ritual. After you give birth, they give you this platter of sandwiches which come with
that they had prepared, but they had not prepared a blanket for the baby.
And it's just felt bizarre. But again, they needed to clear the room, so they're just forcing us through the process. So here's your sandwich. You need to go take a shower. You need to do X, Y, Z before we can. We need to check off these things before we can actually.
I want to turn this into a comic book. You're basically covered in poop and blood, and you have a baby and no blanket. You're freezing, and there's a sandwich.
Here's a sandwich with a flag of Sweden. Great. So that was bizarre, but like, you could clearly sense the people that were with you during the birth, their ship was over, so they're kind of gone. And then it's the next kind of round of staff that clearly needs to vacate this delivery room because, people must be waiting.
And screaming somewhere else?
And screaming somewhere else. Yeah, then they basically told us that there is no space on the delivery ward, and that they will be putting us in a room in what is called a patient hotel. So it's not actually a hospital ward, delivery ward. It's basically more like a hotel room, which is something in these birthing houses, which is more for second-time parents that have, they know what's happening, they've done this before, they will stay on site for the first night or something, but they don't really want to be out of hospital for it. But that was the only place that was free. So they basically told us, and now it's going to be like a bit of a long walk. It's going to be like a 10-minute thing. And it's actually also really cold in the hallway.
10-minute walk?
I mean, I wasn't going to walk.
You didn't have to walk. Okay.
Yeah. Luckily, they had a 2-wheelchair available. No, but they basically tell you have to really dress warm. And as if everything was such an emergency, we didn't pack for, I think luckily we did. We had access to snowsuit for daughter and Maya, also Raptor and all of this. Just prepared for this 10-15 minutes walk to this patient hotel. Yeah, and then we go through this hallway and check the radio, not walk, and it was actually very cold. They drop you off there, and you would have hoped that this is where the horror story ends, but sadly not, because they just kind of abandoned us there. We've had a traumatic birth where you didn't feel taken care of, and then you get put in this into this patient hotel room, which again also has this, it's a regular bed. Normally in hospitals you have the beds which you can adjust the backrest and stuff like that. So nothing, it was like a bit hospital style shelter basically. And there's also not a lot of staff on site because again it's not the delivery ward, and that's kind of where we are mostly on our own. And I also thought, what they would give you like a bed for your child, like this little bassinet, bassinet, or how they look like a bit like a plexiglass or whatever. Those kind of things that have wheels and none of that. So basically, it's like, here's a baby, here's your room, enjoy, figure it out. And then I asked for a baby nest because I felt like we need to put her somewhere, and I think thought it was the odd request, but they had.
Were they thinking that you keep the baby in your arms continuously? I mean, it's nice to have a newborn in your arms. It's a beautiful feeling, but then you also
I'm not really sure much what they had in mind, but it wasn't seemed like an odd request to them. But whatever, they managed to do that. I put her down, tried to get some sleep. That's the moment when you realize also as a new mother how your brain has changed, because I basically couldn't even sleep after, of course, all of the stress, but also just because, I felt like I can give a breathe, and you kind of need to, I don't know if you need to stay awake, but it kind of, even when you're harvesting, you kind of can hear your baby breathe as, they're alive.
You're so scared and they just die.
Yeah, and the constant fear. Yeah.
Think what if they stop breathing? And
exactly.
For no reason. Why would they? It just came out. But we're just scared. Because you also don't feel like you have a safe space to keep the baby. If it's in the bassinet, maybe it's also because we're trained like this, watching media and watching.
Yeah, you kind of have an expectation how this works, and you think, I know how to do this because I kind of know how it works. But then you're in a situation where you kind of don't have the support or the facilities that you would have expected, and then it's a bit like, okay, so how do we do this? And then also to be alone with the child, but no one really around, because one thing that came with this patient hotel is that for us to get food, Sid actually had to go out, and it would take, I don't know, probably 20 to 30 minutes to go somewhere and actually get food and bring it back. So there wasn't any service, there was nothing close by where you would get food, which is how it is at the delivery ward, that you just have food available in the next room, or I think they bring it, So then I was just freaked out, because every time we wanted to eat something, he had to actually leave me for half an hour or something. I'm like, what? Or if something happens, there's no one here.
How did you breastfeed? That was just intuitive? You got that?
I also just wondered, probably it's something that they read about, people care stuff, but it wasn't really much of a support with figuring that out, and it didn't really work. Which it actually doesn't for the recurrent, which is also one of these things that nobody tells you. Like, there's so many things around childbirth and breastfeeding that just nobody tells you, because I think people are either traumatized that they don't want to talk about it, or
Thank you for talking about it.
or they forget about it. So when you feel like, oh, it's not really working so well, you always feel like, oh, what am I doing wrong? Or like, why isn't this working? But I think it's fairly common.
There's no lactation consultant who came to you and like was like, okay, this is how you latch.
No, I don't think there was any sort of proactive support, anything where we felt like, oh, maybe this is working so great. We had to like ask for someone, and then, I mean, every time we called for a midwife or a nurse, it was someone else coming, so there's no consistency. And at some point, I think they gave us some formula, like, yeah, now she's really probably eat something, so we're just going to try to feed her with this like tiny cup and like feed her these tiny drops of milk. And yeah, it wasn't really a lot of help. And one of the, I think, most scariest things that's happened in that process with
One more scary process.
it's not. I'm telling you, like, this is, I can still go for like another hour with all this. Yes, more to come. She was coughing up fluids. I guess was called umbilical fluids, or I think it's quite normal that might still happen.
Like she had fluids and kind
I think that's, I don't know if it's in the lungs, but I think they just kind of like still have some fluids that they kind of get out of their system. I don't know. It was a bit scary because, again, like this is the first time, like, you've never been through anything of that sort, and we got a bit like freaked out by that.
Yeah, I mean, if I would meet anyone who coughs fluids,
yeah,
that is very scary. And
I think we just wanted to call someone, and because there also wasn't a call button, like you literally have to pick up the phone, and I think at some point you have to like call reception, or like just get somewhere to some sort of stuff. And it took, I would say, at least 20 minutes for someone to show up. And by that time, it passed and it was fine. And there was like no sort of sense of empathy for it, like new parents. Then they actually asked us, so did you turn blue? I'm like, well, I don't know. What do you mean? Yeah, well, next time, before you call us, just switch on the light and see if she turns blue. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, and then what? Like, wait for 20 minutes for someone to show up and my baby's dead. Like, what are you even talking about? So, I mean, that was the level of, I would like say, neglect, to be honest, or lack of support that you got in this facility. Or, yeah, again, felt more like a factory than anything else.
Strange. I mean, how many women are giving birth? We're talking about Sweden. It has so less people. It's not like you're in New York, or like, and you're not even in the center of Stockholm. Like, it's like outside of Stockholm. Like, how many women can possibly give birth the same day in the same hospital?
Yeah, I think it's generally quite a stretched system. So, as much as you kind of feel angry at certain individuals, or, why haven't they done more? But in Sweden, they operate in a system that was designed for efficiency and profit in a sense, you could say, or, reducing costs. Yeah, it was quite shocking to how little space they have to even see you as humans, and it's like a life-changing experience. And yeah, sure, you do this, I don't know how many times every day, but for this person, this is the first time or the only time that they work through that experience.
Probably the only time after this experience, very much.
Pretty much. In Sweden, you'd be surprised. A lot of people have many kids, actually. So
yeah, but my friends saying, like, actually, I would have imagined, like, in Sweden, everybody has children. And that's, you would at least, like, even if you don't have kids, people who have kids, like, there are children everywhere. It's so child-friendly.
Yeah.
And I would expect, even though Swedish people don't talk a lot about their private life, but I would have expected them to share that experience because it seems to be so open about that topic.
Maybe.
Didn't your friends tell you what it's going to be like? Or after that, did you talk to people and they were like, oh, this is very unusual, or I've had something similar?
And even before Maya was born, our friends who also had quite a traumatic birth experience. And you kind of, these things, you kind of feel like, it happens to other people, or it's just like this one time something that happened that the more you start thinking about it, the more you start talking about it, you realize it's actually more common than not. I do think why this is not let out there, because these are quite like personal traumatizing experiences that not everybody maybe wants to share or wants to relive. One thing that I've also noticed afterwards, like I always kind of try to prepare pregnant women for just to kind of know what to do if something goes wrong, but you also don't want to scare people, right? You don't want to be like, oh, this is what's going to happen to you, or like this is what can happen to you, so you don't want to freak people out.
Which is why I try to keep a balance in the podcast between really scary stories. I've never do this. And happy stories, but it does feel like, do you want to talk about the trauma? Do you want to talk about the bad things that can happen to you? Because it might stop people from having kids.
Yeah.
You also don't want that, because it's a beautiful thing to have children. It's like the most wonderful thing in the world. But should be aware.
Yeah. No, I think, there's no guarantee in this, in how it's going to go for you. And probably, I don't know, I don't have any data around that, like in how many cases it goes well versus it doesn't. But I do think if I had maybe been exposed more to the flip side of it, I would have prepared better, because I think I went into this maybe a bit naive. I was like, sure, I'm just going to breathe out my baby. It's going to be fine. I probably won't want an epidural. So I think if I had maybe been a bit more prepared that this can also like go differently, I would have prepared myself and my husband differently, and we need someone that knows the system, that knows how to manage that system, what to say when, and how to get you through, and actually speak up and stand up for you in that process.
Yeah, it feels so frivolous, or it feels like such an unnecessary extra thing when you're pregnant. You think like, I need somebody to manage, like to tell the nurse when to measure my blood pressure. Like still, whenever I talk to my doula and she's talking about like, it's really important, I will make sure that you only get your blood pressure measured every like X hours. And it's like, who cares? But no, when you're giving birth, you don't want somebody to pinch a needle up your arm so that you can't properly stand anymore, like hold yourself, if it's unnecessary.
Yeah, but exactly. And you need someone that knows what are your rights, what is your sort of human rights during the process of birth. Like, what can they actually do to you, and what can you say no to? And that, I think, is quite crucial, to have someone that understands the system and, basically knows your wishes and can make sure it happens the way that you would have wanted it. And if you end up spending most of your labor at the hospital, it's not that there's someone with you all the time, right? I mean, they're like in and out. So you also have someone with you throughout the entire process.
Yeah, and somebody who knows you, and even if they just know where the snacks are, so you can get some energy. Because it feels like when you're in labor and you know that bag of the chocolate is over there, and you really need to eat because you're out of energy, but you can't reach there.
Yeah.
Like, it feels just like you're a prisoner and not be able to get to anything. So you need somebody to support you.
Yeah, and I think especially since we opted for this less medical type of setup with midwives only, so we kind of thought kids probably couldn't be like that. Why do you have another person they can part of the process?
And why would women who are midwives, midwife always comes with this, at least for me, always comes with this visual of a very kind woman, that wise woman who is taking care of bringing in the next generation and is very understanding of the female body and probably against interventions.
Yeah.
Doesn't want it to be as traumatizing as if you have a male doctor who would just cut you open. So that is the image that you have of a midwife. So you would be like, why would I need a doula?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I'm not saying my experience is representative of all the women in Stockholm even that have given birth, but you'd be shocked how many people I know that have had quite traumatic and horrible experiences, and some really with quite negative outcomes from a medical perspective as well, right? And I think we were quite shocked also with the level of lack of empathy, neglect, and arrogance also from some of these midwives. So what happened down the line, I think you usually stay 2 or 3 nights, And then you go home. But towards the end of that period, I basically told my husband, I was like, I cannot go home. Like, I'm not mentally or physically in a condition that I can go home. Also, especially, how do you leave the hospital if the breastfeeding isn't working well? Like, how do you feed your child? Like, all of this just seemed like unsafe and like run. But it's not like, they come towards the end and they do like some checklist just to make sure, we've done our thing, they send you home. But I was like, you're going to have to ask for someone, unless some sort of psychologist or whatever, to basically make sure that, like, I can't go. Like, this is not happening. As much as I hate being here, but I'm, much more freaked out by the idea of being at home with not even any access to any support. So I think that's where we started to speak to some of the managerial staff at the hospital with sharing, what our experience was, and, kind of complaining, and also telling them that we will, have a formal complaint about this, and, thinking about even kind of suing the hospital for all of that. And that's where suddenly these things started moving a bit, and then...
Yeah, the louder you scream, the faster things move.
Yeah, sadly, but nobody really cared about it before that. And then they moved us to the delivery ward, which usually I think is spent only the first night there. So then they moved us there. And suddenly, everything changed. And we actually got the care that we should have gotten 3 days ago. With, breastfeeding and the option of, we have pumps here. So, if it isn't working, we just pump and then bottle feed. And then we started actually having, people there at a press of that button. And food was, available. And then we actually got some support in the end.
Yeah, but how would you know that there are breast pumps available?
Well, you don't know. That's something you don't really say, and you just kind of shipped off to this place where you don't know what you can expect. You don't know what you could have asked for, if you could have asked for. So the person that we actually had, or he had on the phone, that was telling us not to come in, and was, in some sense responsible for how long this thing happened. So when he got there and met her, she's like, welcome back to the crime scene. Which is like, what's wrong with you? You've just traumatized 3 people. Luckily nothing, major happened, other than that long-lasting trauma. And you think it's funny to make such a stupid comment, 3 days after this happened, welcome back to the crime scene. Clearly you know what you did was wrong, and you committed a crime, and you think it's funny. That was just... he didn't tell me too much after, because I would have lost it.
Yeah.
And then we had all this, with the management of the hospital talking about the experience, and, actually registering a formal complaint about this whole thing. And then ended up going home, which was less scary, I guess, than I thought it was going to be, because then again you realize, no, you got this. Actually, outside of all this nonsense, of all this drama that you have to deal with, and you're actually not getting any help, you're just more frustrated because you have people that should help you, but they're not helping you. So when you're actually on your own, it's easier, because then you will just...
Then you do things intuitively, because if you don't, otherwise you, when you're traumatized, usually you're so insecure about suddenly, you don't know who you are anymore. You don't know where you are.
You question your instincts, right? Because it's a lot of stress that affects the brain and your decision making and your thought processes, etc. Then first night at home, my German nurse, and we had this little bed on the side for her, because it's not safe. I was scared that suffocation or something could happen, so we put her to sleep. It was dead, and she was just making sounds throughout the night, couldn't fall asleep, and I just kept kind of checking on her, and I realized she was getting quite cold, because newborns, they can't regulate their body temperature. It takes a while for that to develop. And then in the middle of the night, we just called the support line, and went to skin to skin contact to just warm her up, and didn't put it back down, just kind of kept her, and we're going to go in to meet a midwife when there is, I don't really know what it was, the next day. And again, they just speak to you with so much arrogance, some sort of attitude around the breastfeeding, and I'm really supportive. They're just rude. And they basically told us, yeah, but what did you say? Like, you could just, all three of you sleep at the same time? I'm like, yeah, I mean, why not? No, I mean, one of you has to hold her and have her on you in the beginning, like, all the time. So I'm like, okay, well, didn't know that, but, we're a medical professional, I guess you would know. And then the real torture started, because then we were on shifts 24/7, basically, with one of us holding, even if she was asleep, we're just holding her just to not put her down, and all of us sleep at the same time. So we had this.
This is so counterintuitive because every single parenting, baby birthing book said mother sleeps when baby sleeps.
Yeah.
And father can whatever, do the laundry. Like, you're not supposed to constantly hold the baby. Also talking about spoiling the baby, I feel like I have it for co-sleeping and everybody. But that is really, they get so used to this, being held then can't let you ever be able to just breathe or take a glass of water. And also your body, because newborns can't hold themselves, right? So you need both your hands and you're doing this for 24 hours.
It also doesn't make sense. I mean, there's so many things that I'd be like, I would never, if I would do this again, I would never follow that advice. I would not say anyone's advice. I would just, go with your gut, go with what feels right. And that's really the only advice to new parents is just don't go against your own instincts, because your instincts as a mother are so sharp. You will most definitely do the right thing instinctively. So that was one of these things where then it was just a real horror, because one of us is up all the time with her on us. And on top of that, we're pumping and bottle feeding, right? So also the feeding takes double the amount of time because you're pumping and then you're feeding. So we were just so sleep deprived. It was insane.
Which is also dangerous because then you're taking this, you're not in your full mind.
It was just desperation. I would say it was just pure desperation. There's a reason why sleep deprivation is
a torture technique. Yes, it is a torture technique. It turns you into you walk against a wall, and you walk into a wall and you won't even feel it.
Yeah, but then again, fresh out of the delivery room, there's a whole healing process that takes quite a long time.
Yeah, it's just stitched up.
Yeah, I mean, it's that in itself is, it's pain, it's maintenance, and you have a newborn, you're trying to figure everything out. You are on a 24/7 schedule to hold the baby. And I remember clear as day, I don't know exactly which day it was, but it was somewhere in those first 2 weeks where I just told Sarah, I was like, if I ever lose my mind and go crazy and then to have another child, please remind me of this deadline. I mean, it was just pure desperation. I mean, really,
when did you decide to just do it like everybody else does, hold the baby, of course, but not 24/7 and sleep?
I think it was
out of 3 hours.
Yeah. I think it was out of that desperation that we were it's just.
And why also 3 hours? What's the?
Sorry.
Why also
Oh yeah, that was another thing that actually they also told us that we have to wake up our baby every, I think it was 3 or 4 hours to feed them, even if they're sleeping. So that was another thing. We're on a 24/7 schedule of holding our child. And then there's another alarm clock that's running in the background of when we have to feed her every 3 to 4 hours. There's an alarm clock.
Was she underweight or what?
No, that's just how they say, they have to eat at that frequency, which again is something I would never do that again. Okay, if my child was from birth, underweight, but I had a very solid weight from the start, and she dropped a bit in the beginning, but she was never at any sort of dangerous level underweight. But they basically tell you to wake up your child maximum every 3-4 hours. So then this schedule was bizarre, 24/7 holding your child, pumping, feeding, and you already know you're working against the clock because it's time to feed again in 3 hours. I mean, it was just, it was bizarre. Yeah, stressful time.
It's a stressful time. But I mean, at least physically, mentally, did you go to any psychologist after that to do, is this your therapy session? No.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I can still talk about it and also kind of, laugh about the crazy part is that I feel like now I'm, kind of process this and overcome this trauma, but also nobody really offered that in the process, even in the checkups afterwards. So there was never really an offer to, as long as I don't think I had proper postpartum depression in that sense. But yeah, I definitely had a trauma, which should have been treated, I guess, in hindsight. I think it took me, about 3 years. The sort of key moment of how I felt like, okay, so now I've actually let it go was when I was practicing breath work. And for some reason, during one of the sessions, that just kind of like came up. It came and went in like a few seconds of like, but now you can actually just let go. I can just let go of the trauma and just the trauma does to all of your relationships with yourself, with your partner, with your child, to just actually be able to let it go.
You breathed it out.
I breathed it out in the end. See, it's all in the breath. It's all in the breath.
Then thank you so much, Eileen, for coming. This is the end of this podcast episode. It was quite a ride. I hope you, can I say, enjoyed listening to this? I don't know if this was enjoyable, but I hope it was educative and you feel maybe also a little bit more understood in whatever situation you're in. Or share this maybe with a friend that goes through something similar. There is more women out there who are going through this. And this is the end of 9+9, the Pregnancy and Birthing podcast. And you can like our YouTube page, you can follow us on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts and The Truth. And we're also on a couple of different platforms. And if you have any feedback or a story that you want to share, then you can email us to 9 as a number, PLUS, and then again 9 at Harkat, HARKT.L. Thank you so much. This podcast was produced by Harkat Studios.